They have a problem here. They have an issue because the disciples of Jesus Christ, the learners, the followers of Christ, are breaking the rules. And Jesus said, have you not read? Have you not understood what's going on? Have you not read what David did? Now David is one that they esteem. They are Jewish. They are holding on to their esteem, their value in being Jewish. And he says, haven't you read what your father David did, the one that you lift up and look up to? Don't you remember what David did? That when he was hungry and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and he ate the holy bread. Don't you remember that, Pharisees? Here they are with their rule book out and they're telling them, you're wrong, you're out of order. This isn't the way things should go. And we know that in our own lives, there are times when we don't fit within the rules, that somebody is quick to hold up a scorecard and say you're out of order, you're going in the wrong direction, you don't fit, you're too tall, you're too small, you have too much money, you don't have enough money, you're something out of order. Well, Jesus said, let me give you some context. And the context is 1 Samuel chapter 21, verses 1 through 6. David was running from Saul. Saul was out to kill him. He had a spear sharpened with David's name on it, ready to kill David. That's the context here that is given in Matthew chapter 12, verse 3. It ties into 1 Samuel chapter 21. Ask the question, what did David do? Jesus said, have you not read what David did? No, what did he do? Your good study Bible will show you, will tell you, will lead you back to the truth. And there's a reference point that will tell you, look at 1 Samuel chapter 21. And in 1 Samuel chapter 21, what happened was David was running for his life because Saul was out to attack him. And while he was running, he was hungry. And the men that were fighting with him, that were going with him, because they were loyal to David, they were hungry. And so David said, we got to get something to eat. So he asked a man named Ahimelech, who was the high priest at the time. He said, Ahimelech, can you give us something to eat? And he says, well, David, we don't have anything to eat here. And David says, I'm out here on a special mission from Saul. Now catch this. That's a lie. David, that's not true. You're running from Saul because Saul's about to kill you. It's important here. He's running because Saul is going to kill you. This is the context. The context is David is running he's running for his life from Saul. But when Ahimelech asked him, what is it that you're here for? How did you get here? He said, I'm here because I'm on a special mission from Saul. David lied. And Ahimelech said, all I have is the holy bread. And he gave it to him. The bread that was set aside for the ministers of the word of God. David did not qualify because he was not designated to receive the bread. But Ahimelech said, in this special situation, because you're here on a special reason, I'm going to allow you to have it. And God did not repay David with any kind of evil as a result of it. He allowed him and his men to eat the bread. What's the point? The context is that in Matthew chapter 12, when it talks about what Jesus did and what Jesus said, the Pharisees are questioning why the disciples can eat from the grain field on Sabbath. And Jesus here lifts up the question, haven't you read, aren't you familiar that God allowed a time when David could eat when it wasn't lawful? Want to play by the rules. Want to judge people. Jesus said, that's not what I'm about. Jesus said the law, the rules, the guidance of the book, of the word of God is not to keep people out, it's to bring people in. Yeah, I said don't eat, but if it means that somebody will die, that a servant of God will go unfed, then feed them. Yes, I only gave you enough to have one loaf for yourself. But if somebody's in need, give them the whole loaf. That's the context. Because not only did David lie, but David also, when they found out that he was lying, they said, David, that's not true. We saw what happened. Somebody was there, they overheard David. That's not what happened. And they said that David started acting like he had lost his mind. He started foaming at the mouth and rolling on the ground, and spit was sliding down his beard and sliding down his face. He acted outside of the character of God. He lied. He lied about the reason he was there, and he acted outside of the character of God, and yet God said, have something to eat. That's the context. You and I live within the context of God, that we got to be careful that every time that we feel out of step, understand that God's context on our life is bigger than the rules. Yes, I'm weird, I'm awkward, I'm strange, I'm 16, I'm 18, people laugh at me, I find myself out of order. Somebody says you're too kind, you're too nice, you're too mean, you're too this, you're too skinny, you're too big, whatever it is. God said, I brought you forward with a context. And here in Matthew chapter 12, the disciples have an issue with Jesus and his disciples because they don't fit within their narrow definition understanding of God. They're concerned about small things. Who's wearing what? Who has on what? Did you see what he or she had on today? Worrying about who said what about them. Worrying about who stepped on their foot, whether it's accidental or if they meant to do it. He says, that's not the context of which I brought you into this world. That's not why I'm keeping you in Baltimore to worry about who's in charge and who's getting the credit and who's right and who's wrong. He said, I left you there to love. Whether you're on one side or the other, love. We don't have sides. We don't have a concern for right and wrong. We have a concern for love. Amen. We don't have a concern for the Pharisaical law as saying it's this or that. It's love. Whether you're right, whether you're guilty, whether you're innocent, the love of Jesus Christ has been emptied out into our hearts. And now he says the context of your life is to love one another. Yes. Yes. How do we move forward? We love. I agree with the charges. I disagree with the charges. Love one another. I agree with the officers. I don't agree with the officers. Love one another. I agree that he should have been chased. He shouldn't have been chased. Love one another. I agree that she shouldn't have had that child out of wedlock. Well, she should have. Love one another. I agree that he shouldn't have left his family. Or he should have stayed with his family. Love one another. I agree that I should take this job or I shouldn't take this job. Love one another.